Okay, this is just a quick overview of some key features regarding the time of the end, as we see in Daniel 8 through 12, to demonstrate the connection of the entire book, or the latter portion of the book regarding Daniel 8 forward. So you really have to pay attention to grasp it. It's not an easy thing. You have to look at it over and over. You have to consider the different views. But when all the details are put together and the focus is properly put on Christ, the Adventist view rises to the top. In the opening statement in Daniel 8, Gabriel told the prophet that the vision given to him was for the time of the end. His explanation then began with the first element, the Persian ram, verse 20, chapter 8. Notice they're color-coded because we'll look at the figure. These are highlighted. And continued down to its last element, the time factor of evening mornings, from Daniel 8:26. And the vision of the evening and mornings, which was told is true, therefore seal up the vision, and it refers to many days in the future. The obvious inference of Gabriel's explanation is that the time element presented with this vision leads the interpreter along to that time of the end in human history. Many days in the future, in other words. That vision is sealed up. Okay. The same point is brought out in explanation of this vision given in Daniel 11 and 12. The final activities of the king of the north are described as occurring in the time of the end. At the time of the end, underlined here, the king of the south shall attack him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships, shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. At that time, what time? The time mentioned right before that, the end of chapter 11. This is the first part of chapter 12. At that time, Michael stands up and delivers his living saints and resurrects his dead saints. See that in chapter 12, 1 through 2. At that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince, who stands watch over the sons of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time, your people shall be delivered, everyone who's found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. At that time. The reference here is to the establishment of the final kingdom of God. This is when the mountain strikes the earth that's cut out without hands and fills the earth. And this occurs at the end of the time of the end. Within that same time of the end, the prophecies of Daniel were to be unsealed, studied, and understood. But you, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. So what is this talking about? Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. That's talking about, in context, which is so easily missed by people, about these prophecies. The word, shut up the words and seal the book. It's talking about the prophecies of this book in context, not your IQ going up on average across the world and people driving in planes, trains, and automobiles. At least that's not the primary application. How do we know? Go your way, O Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. There's a time of the end that's a period of time that culminates in the end of the world and the resurrection from the dead. The references in Daniel 11:40 regarding that man from chapter 8 and 12:4-9 indicate that the time of the end was to be a period of time, because all those things have to occur, and that the prophetic time periods referred to in Daniel 8:14, 26, 12:7, and 11 lead up to that final period. Since the prophecies in Daniel 7 and 8 and 10 through 12 all lead up to the time of the end, which is to be followed by the setting up of God's final kingdom. The time periods mentioned in these prophecies should naturally be seen as extending through history unto the time of the end. In the sweep of history described in the prophecies that extend from the prophet in the 6th century BC, Babylon, when Daniel wrote, to our time, and even beyond till the second coming, the literal time periods of 3.5 years, the 1260 days or 42 months, or the 6.5 years, that is the 2300 days, are not capable of reaching anywhere near this final end time, especially in the context of this sweep of history established in Daniel 2 and reiterated in Daniel 7 and 8, namely from Babylon to the Roman Empire, of which is then further explained into history, following that same pattern. Therefore, these prophetic time periods, those mentioned in Daniel and Revelation, should be seen as symbolic and standing for considerably long periods of actual historical time extending to the end time. Why is that true? Because it sets the pattern of sweeping time that everybody accepts. Because the days of Daniel's weeks are years. Because Daniel 7 speaks well into the new covenant period. And because the one in Daniel 8 is called the little horn and is exceedingly great from his predecessors, which isn't true of Antiochus, is ridiculous. And he's also called the little horn. And he's also connected up until the time of the end. Notice how it says literal time periods of 3.5 or 6.5 years, meaning the 1260, 3.5 years or 42 months, and the 6.5 years, which is what 2300 days would be. Notice he's saying, taking those as literal time periods of the 1260 days or the 2300 days would be the same thing as what he's saying there. If we take these as literal time periods of 1260 literal days or 2300 literal days, they're not capable of reaching anywhere near the final end time. But the figure in Daniel 8 is clearly connected to the time of the end, down to still future full fulfillment, because the resurrection from the dead hasn't occurred yet, of course, because it's literal, because Daniel's said to be standing in his lot at the end of days, which indicates, unless you think Daniel was spiritually resurrected in the first century, I don't see anything in the Bible about that. But apparently this resurrection will have Daniel standing in his lot at the end of days, which connects the resurrection from the dead, by the way, to the end times, not the first century. Therefore, the Maccabean hypothesis would naturally want to connect Daniel 8 and 9 for similar reasons that I would, but also, I can give references to that and have posted them. But because of the language from Daniel 8 and 9, many interpreters would want to apply Daniel 9 to that period as well. Do you think they're right about that? And by the way, notice, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end, Daniel. Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. If all these interpreters were right about Antiochus, then that was the unsealing of the prophecy, because they were right. If you're saying they were right, if the majority of interpreters were right, then the time of the end has to be the first century, unless you don't think the Bible is serious about sealing up the prophecy, and that's actually a true statement. But it is a true statement, right? Because the Bible is true. So if you say Antiochus is the primary indication or the right interpretation, then you have to, if you take the Bible as being accurate, fully accurate in this prophecy, therefore the time of the end happened before Jesus was born. And the resurrection from the dead occurred before Jesus was even born. And so Jesus wasn't necessary for this final resurrection, which happens at the time of the end. If it's Antiochus, then the time of the end is the first century before Jesus was even born. And Michael stood up before Jesus was That's heretical. Sorry to say it. That's ridiculous. And no one would defend that, but the text demands it. In fact, you probably don't realize it, but it demands it.